We are diving deep into a fascinating case of tech history
Oh,
today.
that's a good one.
It's a story of a market leader just collapsing, and not just because of a competitor, but because of a massive strategic error by its own parent company.
We are, of course, talking about Skype.
Exactly. The final act. Microsoft is officially shutting down the consumer service for Skype in May 2025.
And it feels like the end of an era, but it's really, I think, a definitive closing chapter on one of the most interesting business case studies of the last decade.
I think so too. I mean, if you were working or going to school in, say, early 2020, you remember the sheer chaos of video
Oh,
conferencing?
literally chaos.
Everyone was scrambling. I remember helping my family troubleshoot their setups, that perpetual question of, is the camera on? Is the mic muted?
And juggling all the platforms.
All of them. You had Zoom, you had Microsoft Teams, and somewhere, someone was probably still clinging to Google Hangouts.
Which is itself a now defunct product.
Right.
It just proves how fast these markets move.
It does, and that chaos is really the key to this whole story.
Right. This deep dive isn't just a eulogy for old software. It's a critical look at market timing, strategic choices, and the devastating speed of digital disruption.
So our mission today is to unpack all the source material we've gathered, the market analyses, the internal reporting, to figure out the two specific forces that successfully killed Skype.
The first being the brilliance of Zoom, its timing and its product design.
And the second, which is maybe more surprising, is the realization that Microsoft, the company that paid $8.5 billion for Skype, may have been its most effective assassin.
To understand the murder, we have to look at the victim right before the event happened.
Good point.
Because it's easy to forget just how dominant Skype was. I mean, unlike Teams, which was always focused on enterprise clients.
Right, the big corporate contract.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Skype was the go-to consumer product. It was a household name.
Absolutely. And given that name recognition, you would assume Skype was perfectly positioned for that massive, sudden video boom of 2020.
You'd think so. But the opposite happened.
And we have data from early 2020, cited in one of our sources, that gives us this absolutely stunning snapshot of the market right before everything changed.
The numbers are shocking, mainly because they prove Skype was actually winning the race just months before the crash.
Winning by a lot.
At the very start of 2020, Skype controlled a huge 32.4% of the market share.
32.4%.
Zoom was a strong competitor, sure, but it was still behind at 26.4%. Skype was the incumbent, the leader.
Now hold on to that number, 32.4%. Because by the following year, just 12 months later, Skype's market share had plummeted
And not just a little.
to only 6.6%. That's a loss of over 3/4 of its market in a single year.
It's not a gradual decline, it's a near total collapse.
It just shows how precarious even massive brand dominance can be in tech.
Well, if we zoom out a bit, no pun intended, this shift illustrates the violence of network effects when a crisis hits.
What do you mean by that?
The analysts we reviewed concluded that the pandemic didn't directly kill Skype, but it certainly put a few bullets into its side as it died a slow death.
So it accelerated an existing problem.
Precisely. The world needed a simple mass consumer solution, and it needed it right then. Zoom became the undisputed default brand, and everyone else was just left in the dust.
Okay, so let's unpack that. How did Zoom do it? They didn't just win. They completely redefined the market. What specific features or strategies let them just blow past Skype, Teams, and Google Meet?
Well, one of our sources broke it down into 5 key factors, and these should be required reading for any startup. It wasn't just one thing, it was a perfect storm.
And number one was simplicity.
Radical simplicity. I mean, think back to the frustration of trying to get your parents onto an old platform. You might need to install software, create an account.
Oh, it was a whole process. A 15-minute technical support call before the meeting even started.
Exactly. Zoom eliminated all that friction. The interface was clean, intuitive, and most importantly, users could join a meeting with just a simple web link.
That was the game changer. No login required for guests.
No technical knowledge needed. That became indispensable when, grandparents and kindergartners were suddenly forced onto video calls.
Factor number 2 was reliability. This one is subtle, but so critical.
When the entire global workforce went remote overnight, the strain on video infrastructure was just immense.
And Zoom just worked.
It just worked. Their infrastructure handled the heavy load. It adapted well to varying bandwidths, from a big office connection to shaky home Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm.
And the performance was consistent.
You could trust it. That builds confidence immediately, which their competitors couldn't match at that scale.
Then there's a third factor, which I think cemented their consumer dominance.
The freemium model.
Oh, absolutely. That free 40-minute meeting feature changed everything.
It made Zoom instantly accessible for everyone.
Schools, families, book clubs, you name it. They could use it without any upfront cost. Meanwhile, Microsoft was still focused on selling enterprise licenses for Teams.
They completely failed to pivot their consumer product, Skype, to match that kind of mass market generosity.
And factor 4, scalability. Zoom wasn't just for casual chats.
No, it was designed to handle pretty much anything, a one-on-one check-in or a 1,000-person webinar. The experience felt the same.
That versatility allowed it to bridge the gap between consumer and professional use seamlessly.
But the final factor is what really sealed the deal for them, I think.
Brand identity.
The ultimate triumph.
It's a level of success few companies ever achieve. Just like Google became the verb for search.
Zoom became the generic shorthand for online meetings.
Exactly. People had said, "I'll Skype you" for years, but that died almost instantly and was replaced by "Let's Zoom."
That is a massive cultural and linguistic shift in less than a year.
It's game over at that point.
Incredible speed. But here's where it gets really interesting for me. We've established that Zoom won the external fight, right?
They did.
But the fact that Microsoft is only shutting down the consumer service now, in 2025, suggests that this was also an internal choice, a strategic decision.
It absolutely was. Microsoft had two horses in the race: the acquired legacy product, Skype, and their internally developed enterprise machine, Teams.
And they chose Teams.
They chose Teams. And to understand that choice, you have to go back to the acquisition. Microsoft bought Skype in May 2011 for a staggering $8.5 billion.
$8.5 billion. In cash.
And they integrated it everywhere: Outlook, Xbox, Windows.
So they spend all that money, weave it into their entire ecosystem, and then just decide to kill it anyway. It turns that massive asset into a liability.
Well, it certainly looks like a strategic misstep now, doesn't it? They bought this thing only to effectively replace it with an internal product just a few years later. The market shifted, and they doubled down on enterprise.
Well, wait a minute, though. Microsoft had Teams, which was hugely successful with businesses. Why didn't they just simplify Teams for consumers instead of letting Skype, the brand everyone already knew, just die on the vine?
That's the core strategic dilemma they faced. They realized Teams was their future, especially because they could bundle it into the lucrative Microsoft 365 ecosystem.
So it was all about the bundle.
It was. And to make sure Teams became, as one source put it, a thing people want to use, they implemented a strategy called cannibalization.
Ah, cannibalization. Let's define that clearly for everyone listening.
In this context, it means Microsoft was deliberately starving Skype to feed Teams.
So they were actively taking resources away from it.
Yes. Development focus, maintenance, engineering talent. It was all being funneled away from Skype and poured directly into making Teams better.
They were letting their own $8.5 billion acquisition degrade on purpose.
To bolster their internal champion, they killed Skype to make sure Teams would win.
That makes the price tag look even worse. They didn't just buy it. They intentionally ran it into the ground to boost a competing internal product.
And the final steps of this whole process confirm that pivot. When they announced the closure of consumer Skype for May 2025, they didn't just say, "Good luck, find something else."
No, they explicitly encouraged and streamlined a migration.
To Microsoft Teams Free? They made it frictionless. They said, signing into Teams with your Skype login would automatically transfer your contacts and your chats.
It wasn't an ending. It was a forced march. A mandatory account migration.
They needed to capture those last remaining consumer users and pull them into the Teams ecosystem, which they see as their one unified platform for everything.
So they got the enterprise success they wanted in the end, even if the road there was incredibly convoluted and cost them $8.5 billion to undo their own acquisition.
Yet if we connect this to the bigger picture, this isn't an isolated incident. This $8.5 billion misstep is part of a broader pattern for Microsoft.
You mean struggling with big acquisitions?
Struggling immensely with strategic acquisitions and market timing. They pay top dollar for a market leader, only to realize the market has shifted, or their own internal strategy makes the purchase obsolete.
And the Skype deal, as costly as it was, actually pales in comparison to their attempt to break into the mobile phone market.
Oh, the Nokia acquisition.
Widely considered one of their biggest blunders ever.
A perfect parallel.
Yeah.
They were trying to take on the iPhone, Between 2013 and 2015, they paid $7.2 billion for Nokia's handset business.
Plus another $1.6 billion for patents. We're back at that nearly $9 billion number again.
And they invested all of it in a product line they eventually just abandoned completely.
The outcome was immediate and severe. Windows Phone failed, market share collapsed, and Microsoft wrote off nearly the entire purchase price.
And laid off thousands of people. It's a painful reminder that even endless resources don't guarantee success if the strategy is flawed.
He argued that Microsoft had no business being in the cutthroat, low-margin phone business.
And that insight applies just as clearly here, doesn't it?
It really does. They bought a strong consumer platform, Skype, but then decided their real business was high-margin enterprise software. It effectively made their own consumer asset disposable. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? The death of Skype wasn't simple. It was a powerful two-pronged attack.
First, that external pressure from Zoom. Superior design, reliability, and that killer freemium model that just won the public over.
And second, Microsoft's internal decision to execute a strategy of cannibalization, actively killing the product they paid so much for.
All to focus their resources on making Teams the mandatory unified platform. It's a textbook example of how the right acquisition can still turn into the wrong strategy when the market shifts.
I think the powerful lesson here is about the elusive power of branding. Skype had the name recognition for years.
It did, but Zoom achieved something much deeper.
It became the generic term for entire technology. When a competitor does that, when people start using your competitor's name as a verb, it is usually game over.
And that leads to our final provocative thought for you to consider. The shift from Skype to Zoom was rapid. It was devastating.
And today, we are in the middle of another massive tech shift, this time driven by generative AI.
So you should consider which of the currently emerging AI tools is achieving that same level of brand dominance right now. Because whoever achieves that, whoever becomes the Google or the Zoom of AI, will likely be the undisputed market winner.
Regardless of which tech giant is making the most expensive acquisitions today.